We're back with another tutorial continuation of the series. Still don't know how long this series is going to be, but it will be done when the dress is finished, basically. So in the last video you saw, we left off, I was showing you, I didn't show you how we made the mock-up, but I told you, I mean, this isn't exactly, I guess, a beginner's tutorial, but I assume you do know how to sew and can follow a pattern and direction. So I told you what pattern I used. If you can find the same one or one similar like that, you know, just to dress with a sweetheart neckline that's strapless. And I told you how I made the mock-up. I already had the fitting with the lady, so I already had all my notes down on how much I was going to take in, take off, change, and all that good stuff. So what I've been doing is I have been taking apart the mock-up. See, I already took out the front dart and I still need to undo it here. But I took out, where is it? The back piece. I took apart this back piece, and as you can see, I opened up the dart. Once you take it apart, it's gonna have like a lot of the, I don't know if you can see, like it wants, because this is where it was like sewn down, it wants to like fold up. So once you take it apart, you do have to go, and I'll show you this right now, but I'm just gonna talk about it for a second. Take it apart very cleanly, very nicely. Don't rip anything, don't cut anything off. Just take everything apart that had a seam, go to your ironing station, iron it flat, perfectly flat, clean it off of like any really distracting or texture changing threads that when you iron it, it makes like a bump. So if you have a lot of threads that are making noticeable bumps in the texture, then go ahead and, you know, lint roll all that off. So once you have a clean flat one, then what I did is I put that back. This is like the most boring part of doing this, is transferring it back to paper pattern so you can start cutting out the real deal and get down to business. So I laid it down on, I use, this is not butcher paper, what do I use? I use packing paper. I buy a big roll of it and it works great. The packing paper does tend, once you cut it off the roll, it does tend to like roll back up on itself. So I do have to like steam iron it flat, but it does get flat eventually. So what I did is I just outlined that fabric piece that I cut out and ironed back on the paper. You know, I put in the dart, and you can see here, this is where the dart's gonna go, but of course when you sew it, it's gonna come together. You see the, you know, everything there, and then I put, to remind myself, according to what I took apart in my last video, I'm going, with this pattern, and it'll be the same for the front, I'm going to cut one of the fabric, one of the lining, and then for this dress, I think I mentioned in the first video, it does have a mesh overlay, and then the mesh overlay. So that's 3 types of fabric I have to be cutting out, as well as, well, I already have the boning pretty much measured out because it was cut for the mock-up, which there's really not going to be much of a change, except maybe a little bit on the back, because I did have to cut off like a part that came up in the back to make it level. I cut that part off, but again, when she was wearing it, I did measure that part out. So this one is ready, and I also just made the notation. There's a boning channel that's going to go over the dart, and there's a boning on the center back where I'm going to put the loops for the lace up. So I have this piece done. Now I have to do the front. So let me see, which is the front that I was just working on. Okay, so as you can see, I started taking apart the front. I still need to take out this seam and then mark it. And then remember, I do have these front little darts like near the bust area, and that's, you know, to provide a curvature there. So I'm going to take these apart with my seam ripper. This is a seam ripper. If you are not familiar, it's like I said, this is like the most boring, tedious part of this, is just taking this apart. And just to make sure before you go and iron this part, because these little holes and these markings might disappear when you iron it. So I took out one of the top bust darts. I can see, you can't see on camera, but if you look at it through the light, like you can see where the point was of the dart. So I'm gonna just mark that out really quick using the light, so I know where the point is and where it's going to meet. Also on my notations, I know to take in this dart about a centimeter more. So see, see that center thing right there? So I'm just gonna, like I said, mark it now before. Let me see, where's my ruler? Because I mean, like, it's not a massive change, but I mean, it's what the dress needed. Where's my, let's get my ruler. Let me kind of show you what I'm doing here. So see how I already kind of marked out half a centimeter. Again, this is, according to her, yours might not need this, or you might need more. So this is where, when you do your final fittings, like, or not your final, I'm sorry, your first fittings on the mock-up, you know it needs to be changed.
Oh, hold on. What did she just say? Wow, you are so smart. 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40.
See, now I have everything split open. Now some of these you'll notice, like when I have it flat, the darts are spread apart versus like these little ones are not. But see, so like when I was doing the fitting, well, not just the fitting, but like the grading of the pattern, you know, I had to take in a little bit more at the darts in the front, and there was a lot left over, so I cut off a lot of the excess as I was going. So that's why mine have like a gap. But of course, like when I sew it back together, it, you know, this extra gap creates like a better curvature silhouette to the bodice. So just in case you're like, why is some of them split? And of course, these little ones, there's not that big of a difference. So once you iron it with the seam allowance and everything, it looks like it comes back together. So, but yeah, let me go ahead and iron this. So you just gotta iron that part flat. Everything that sticks up, you gotta iron it flat, because you don't want to have a problem when you put this back on paper. So everything just flat. So here we are down to the front part. I have taken it apart, and like I said, I ironed it flat, made it nice and crisp, opened everything up. So it should look something like this. I mean, even if you're not using the same pattern, I mean, basically you understand what I'm trying to tell you. So I just took, where is it? I just saw it. I took a Sharpie, and I just carefully outlined it where the points was. You know, I kind of like made it soak through the fabric, so you'll see that on the paper when it transfers. So now I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to label it so that way I don't get confused. You know, it's like I did with this one. Bodice back, cut one, cut one, cut one. And I'll write the same thing and the notations and the, I guess, further notations on where I'm going to put the boning in the front. Because as I was saying in my first video, this one didn't have guidelines for where boning goes. I mean, who knows why, but on my version, I'm putting in boning because I think it'll make it look a lot better. So I'm going to finish outlining this properly, join my lines, you know, from like here to the actual point, and then cut it out, and then we will be ready. As far as the top goes, to cut out the fabric that we need and all the other stuff that goes with it for the top. Now, hopefully as you're watching this video, you have your own pattern and you're doing your own thing. You're just using this as kind of like guidance. I'm not going to do a paper pattern for the skirt because what I'm going to do is just take apart the mock-up skirt, iron it flat, and then pin it to the fabric and cut it like that. I'm not going to bother making another paper pattern. Actually, I have a paper pattern. I made one. I made one for that skirt. But either way, you could have done it either way. Either do that or just use the same paper pattern that you used for the skirt bottom, because there really isn't, in my case with my fitting, I didn't have issues with the bottom part. It was only small issues with the top. So I'm lucky. I'm just going to cut that out and then start putting it together. So this was a relatively short video, but this is just how I'm going about doing this. Good luck on your dress, and third video will be me and the construction of it. All right, thanks guys. Bye.